galaxy had been quiet for 12 long years. After the brutal Zoranthian Wars, peace had settled like a fragile glass dome over the stars. Treaties were signed, border patrols reduced, and colonies rebuilt. But peace was a thin thread end on the edge of neutral space. That thread snapped. The human colony on Varelia Prime, a peaceful trading hub, went dark. No distress signal, no survivors, only smoldering ruins and scattered debris. When the Galactic Council investigated, all evidence pointed to the Zoranthians. Tia warships had left behind energy signatures and weapon fragments that matched their technology exactly. The Council demanded answers, but the Zoranthian Empire denied all involvement. Queen Arkaleth, ruler of the cold-blooded and war-hardened Zoranthians, stood tall in her throne chamber and refused to bow to suspicion. Her generals urged war. Her advisors whispered about reclaiming honor, and the people hungered for vengeance. In the great hall of the Zoranthian capital, the drums of war began to beat again. Arkaleth gave the order to prepare the invasion fleet. Battlecruisers rose from the depths of gas giants, and dreadnoughts powered up weapons that hadn't fired in years. The Zoranthian Empire was ready to strike hand. The queen stood silent on her dark balcony, watching the stars burn with purpose. But everything changed when a low-level intelligence officer rushed into the command chamber, out of breath, holding a simple datapad. "Your Majesty," he said nervously, handing it over. Arkaleth took it with her usual icy calm. It was a human transmission intercepted near the outer colony's scrambled audio, weak signal. The translation engine kicked in, static burst, then a voice. "This is Captain Darius Holt. Any surviving units, regroup at coordinates Delta 7. I repeat, Darius Holt, regroup." The moment the name echoed through the chamber, Arkaleth's claws stopped tapping. Her golden eyes widened slightly, just for a second. The room fell still. A general spoke cautiously. "My queen, should we proceed?" But the queen said nothing. Her lips parted as if to speak, then closed again. Her grip on the datapad tightened, until it cracked. The war plans flickered on the screen in front of her, but she no longer looked at them. Darius Holt, a name from the past, a name that should not exist. Holt was a ghost, a whisper in Zoranthian military circles, a figure mothers told their hatchlings about when they misbehaved. He was the human who had turned the tide at Centralis. The unthinkable battle where one squad of human commandos outsmarted an entire legion of Zoranthian elite. He had vanished afterward, presumed dead by his own people. But now, after all these years, he was alive. And worse, he was on the move. Arkaleth stared at the stars again, but they no longer burned with war. They shimmered with something else, fear, perhaps, or the memory of a shame too great to name. Without explanation, she ordered the fleet to hold position. "We wait," she said coldly, her voice low. "Send scouts, quietly, find him." The generals protested. "He's only one man," they argued. But the queen's voice was final. "He's not just a man," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "He's Darius Holt." Somewhere far away, on a battered freighter drifting through asteroid fields, a weathered human sat alone in a dim cockpit, listening to an old message loop. His scarred hand reached out, tapping coordinates into a terminal. Outside the ship, stars continued to burn quietly, but now, war did not feel like a choice. It felt like a storm, gathering around a name that refused to die. Darius Holt sat alone in the cockpit of an old military freighter called the Raven's Echo, drifting through a dead asteroid belt in a forgotten part of space. The ship was silent, except for the low hum of life support systems and the occasional spark from half-broken panels. Holt's eyes, sharp and cold, watched the screen in front of him without blinking. Swan's dark hair was now streaked with gray, and a long scar ran from his jaw to his temple. He was older, slower, and carried a limp from a plasma wound that never healed right. But his mind was still sharp, razor sharp. He listened to the old message again, looping through the static. This is Captain Darius Holt. Regroup at Delta 7. He didn't remember recording it, but someone had sent it, and now the galaxy was listening. He leaned back in the seat, staring at nothing. For years, he had lived in the shadows, far from Earth, far from command, far from everything that once mattered. He had walked away after the mission no one believed could be done. He and his team had taken down a Zoranthian fortress with no reinforcements, using nothing but stealth, strategy, and the cold patience of experience. Many died. Only a few lived. Zorans called it a nightmare, and they called him the Ghost. Holt never told anyone what really happened in those tunnels, what he saw in the Queen's chamber before he let her go. He kept that secret buried, just like he kept himself hidden. But now something had changed. Someone had used his name, and the Zoranthians had heard it. He had hoped they would forget him, but now he knew the silence was over. As if to prove it, a soft chime echoed in the ship. The long-range scanner had picked something up. Holt rose slowly from his seat, wincing as his bad leg resisted. He reached for his sidearm, checked the charge, and walked to the console. There, drifting just beyond the field of rocks, was a Zoranthian scout drone. It hadn't seen him yet. He powered down all non-essential systems and moved the ship deeper into the field, hiding behind a large asteroid. His fingers flew over the manual controls, no AI assistance, just instinct and memory. The drone passed by, searching. Holt didn't breathe. After a full minute, it turned and vanished into the void. He stood still for a while, staring at the darkness, then finally whispered, "So she's looking for me." He knew who she was without needing confirmation. A queen, Arkaleth. She had once stood above him, victorious, certain of her strength till he turned her empire's pride into ashes. He remembered the look in her eyes when he had the chance to end her life and chose not to. She had expected death. Instead, he gave her a truth she couldn't forget, that humans were not weak. They were dangerous. And now, maybe, she feared him more than she feared war. Holt turned back to the main terminal and opened a secure channel, one only a few people in the galaxy still remembered. "This is Holt," he said, his voice firm. "Activate Protocol 9. Send it to Earth Command. Designation: Black Flag. Also, find me Commander Reyes." The signal pulsed and vanished into space. He knew it would reach the right ears. Earth Command had tried to forget him, but they would never ignore a Black Flag signal. Somewhere out there, Reyes, his old second-in-command, was probably still on duty, still waiting for a call that was never supposed to come. Holt paced the narrow hallway of the ship, his hand resting on the wall for balance. Old memories came back with every step. The sound of gunfire, the smell of burning metal, the whispers of teammates lost. He walked into the armory and opened a long, sealed case. Inside was his old battle armor, scratched, worn, but still strong. He ran his hand over the chest plate, where his unit's symbol was barely visible. A white wolf with red eyes, lightly packed. It without speaking, his movements quick and precise. He would need it soon. Within a few hours, a response came through choppy but clear. "Holt, this is Reyes. I can't believe it's you. You're late." Holt smiled slightly. "Same Reyes. Always blunt." "Need a team?" Holt said. "Not just any team. I want the old unit. They're scattered," Reyes replied. "Some are gone. But the rest, I'll find them." Holt nodded. "Tell them to meet at Echo Point. We've got work to finish." Echo Point was an old rendezvous zone in the neutral sector, far from Earth's jurisdiction and out of Zoranthian reach. For now, Reyes didn't ask questions. She never had to. She knew that if Holt was calling, it wasn't for anything small. Meanwhile, across the stars, inside the throne chamber of the Zoranthian capital, Queen Arkaleth stood in front of a giant star map. Her eyes narrowed at a blinking dot that marked the last known trace of the Raven's echo. Her advisors stood behind her, arguing about fleets and invasions, but she barely heard them. Her mind was on a man she hadn't seen in 12 years. She remembered the cold fire in his eyes, the silence of his strike team, the way they had moved like shadows through her fortress. Holt hadn't come for conquest. He had come for something else, something deeper. And when he left her alive, it wasn't mercy, it was a message. Now that message had returned. Why wait? One of her generals demanded. Let us crush him before he gathers allies. He's already gathering them, she said quietly. You can't stop a ghost by chasing it. You must make it come to you. She turned to her guards. Prepare my ship. I will go myself and send a cloaked probe to Echo Point. If he's going there, I want eyes. You will face him alone. The general asked in shock. She smiled coldly. He already beat me once with an army. Let's see if I can defeat him with the truth. Far from her reach, Holt's ship landed at a quiet outpost hidden among rocky cliffs and old mining towers. Echo Point. The air was thin, sky gray with permanent clouds. Holt stepped out and looked around. The place hadn't changed. Crumbling buildings, abandoned weapons, and deep scars in the rock from battles long forgotten. One by one, they began to arrive. Reyes was first, taller now, with more gray in her hair, but her voice still sharp as ever. Then came Gallo, the engineer, with one hand replaced by a cybernetic glove. Next was Sora, sniper and scout, quiet as a shadow. They gathered without ceremony. No one asked why. They just looked to Holt and waited. This isn't about a war, Holt began. This is about what comes before it. Someone wants to start something big and they're using my name to do it. But the queen heard it, and she flinched. That means something. Rhea stepped forward. So what's the plan? Holt turned toward the horizon. We dig. We find the truth. Okay. And we make sure the galaxy sees it before it's too late. In orbit, a cloaked Zoranthian probe hovered silently, recording every word. And in her private chamber, far across space, Arkaleth watched the feed, her expression unreadable. She whispered a name to herself, one that once haunted her dreams. Darius Holt. For the first time in years, she didn't say it with anger. She said it with fear, but also with something else, respect, maybe even regret. In the dark corners of the galaxy, the name was spreading again. The ghost of Syndralis had returned. The stars would never be the same. Queen Arkaleth sat alone in the darkness of her private chamber, surrounded by tall crystal columns and glowing blue lights that pulsed like slow heartbeats. Her golden armor, once polished with pride, now sat untouched beside her throne, covered in a thin layer of dust. She was not the same ruler who had brought the Zoranthian Empire through 2 decades of war. Something deep inside her had shifted the moment she heard the name Darius Holt echo from that human transmission. Since then, she had spoken little and smiled not once. Her advisors whispered behind closed doors, worried by her silence, unsure why the strongest monarch of their kind was suddenly hesitant. But Arkaleth knew what they could not. She remembered the Battle of Central Lisnot, the official version told in Zoranthian history. Tia, but the truth that only a few still lived to recall. She had been there, deep beneath the fortress carved into the frozen mountain, expecting a final victory. The humans were cornered, outnumbered, and cut off. Her forces had every advantage, but Holt had turned the fortress into a maze of traps and false signals. He led a group of elite soldiers through the tunnels like ghosts, striking with perfect timing. One by one, her guards fell. Then he reached her chamber. They stood face to face. She had expected a brutal fight. But instead, he spoke. His words weren't threats. They were cold facts about Zoranthian weakness, the flaws in their command, the limits of pride. He didn't kill her. He looked into her eyes, then turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving her alive and humiliated. She had told no one. She had destroyed the records and ordered the few surviving guards to stay silent, under threat of death. To her people, Centralis was still a victory. But in her heart, it was a wound that never healed. Now, with the name Darius Holt rising again, that wound bled. She walked to the far wall of her chamber and pressed a hidden switch. The wall shimmered and opened, revealing a narrow passage that only she could enter. She stepped inside, her long robes trailing behind her. At the end of the corridor was a chamber filled with ancient scrolls, data cores, and relics sealed away from the world. Only the royal bloodline knew what was kept there. At the center of the room was a glass container holding a single object, a necklace with a strange metal pendant, half human in design, half Zoranthian. The shape was old, smooth, and simple, but it carried a power that made the air hum around it. She reached out and held it in her hand. The pendant once belonged to her ancestor queen, Eltheria, a ruler who lived thousands of years ago before the Zoranthians became the empire they were now. Record said she had been chosen by the gods, but buried writings told a different story. Eltheria had been born from two bloodlines, Zoranthian and something else, something human. Arkaleth had found the truth years ago when she first rose to power. The ancient bloodline was not pure. Zoranthians were not born alone in the stars. They were shaped, changed, and separated by forces no one fully understood. That secret, if revealed, could shake the foundation of her empire. It could end. The belief that her kind were superior. So she had kept it hidden. But Holt's appearance had changed everything. The way he moved, the way he fought, even the way he thought, it all reminded her of something deeper, something older. She believed he had seen the truth during the mission on Centralis. Perhaps he had found the ancient texts hidden in the lower vaults. Perhaps he had learned the same thing she had spent her life trying to forget. And now he was gathering a team, moving through the galaxy, heading towards something important. She knew he was not seeking war. He was chasing the same secret that made him dangerous, not because he would kill, but because he might tell. She placed the pendant back into the case and turned away, her thoughts racing. The choice before her was clear. She could silence Holt forever, as her generals demanded, or she could meet him face to face and ask the question that had haunted her for years. How much did he know? On the other side of the galaxy, Holt and his team had arrived on a barren moon, where ruins older than any known civilization rose from cracked soil. Massive stone structures stretched toward the sky, carved with symbols that were neither fully human nor fully Zoranthian. Reyes scanned one of the walls and looked at Holt with a mix of fear and awe. "These markings," she said, "some of them match the symbols we found on Centralis." Holt nodded, his eyes narrowed. "Think this moon holds what the queen wanted to keep buried." As they moved deeper into the ruins, they found a chamber filled with ancient machines and long-dead power cores. In the center was a pillar with a holographic interface. Holt placed his hand on it. The symbols shifted, and a recording flickered to life. A voice spoke in a long-forgotten dialect, translated by the team's AI. "We were one, human, Zoranth, divided by war, united by blood. Those who remember will awaken. Those who forget will fall." The chamber grew cold. Sora, the sniper, stepped back. "This isn't just history, it's a warning." Holt stood silently, his thoughts heavy. Hey, it's about to come true. Unknown to them, far above in orbit, Queen Arkaleth's personal ship hovered silently in stealth mode. She stood at the viewport, watching the team move through the ruins below. Her eyes did not blink. Her expression did not change. For the first time since Centrales, she was close to Holt again, not to fight, but to understand. If he had found the truth, she needed to see it in his eyes. She turned to her pilot. "Prepare the shuttle," she said. "I'm going down. Alone." The pilot hesitated. "Your Majesty." "No guards," she said firmly. "No weapons. If I do not return, destroy the ship and erase all records." Moments later, she stepped onto the dusty surface of the moon. The wind was silent, the sky dark. She walked through the ruins with quiet steps until she reached the chamber. The team turned, weapons raised, tense, but Holt didn't move. He stared at her as if he had expected her all along. She stepped forward slowly, her hands empty. "You found it," she said softly. Holt lowered his rifle. "You already knew." She nodded once. "I knew. I hid it. I tried to forget it." Reyes looked between them. "What are you talking about?" Holt didn't take his eyes off the Queen. "Tell them," he said. Arkaleth took a deep breath. "We are not so different. Our blood was once the same. We were shaped by those who ruled before us. They feared unity, so they divided us, okay? Gave us different names, different bodies. It made us believe we were enemies." Sora looked shaken. "If this is true, it means the war was never real." Holt turned to the team. "It was real, but it was built on a lie." Arkaleth stepped closer. "And now the lie is cracking. Others will come. Others want to keep the truth buried." A sudden tremor shook the ground. Dust fell from the walls. The holographic pillar began to glow brighter. The recording changed. The voice returned. "They are coming. The Velrith awaken. Hide no more." Holt looked at Arkaleth, fatigued. "You heard that name before?" She nodded slowly. "Once, long ago, in the scrolls we burned. Above them, in the stars, something ancient stirred. Ships unseen for thousands of years were now on the move. The Queen's secret was no longer hidden, and the galaxy would soon remember what it tried so hard to forget. The forbidden moon hung in the black sky like a scarred secret, half hidden behind the debris of long-forgotten wars and cloaked from star maps centuries ago by both human and Zoranthian empires. Neither side ever explained why. Darius Holt had heard rumors of it when he was a young cadet, always whispered, always dismissed as myth, but now he stood on its surface, boots sinking into fine gray dust, eyes fixed on the jagged mountain in the distance that pulsed faintly, with a blue glow not made by nature. Round him, Reyes, Sora, Gallo, and Queen Arkaleth moved carefully, their weapons lowered, but ready, tension thick in the cold air, each of them aware that they were trespassing on something ancient, something dangerous, something that had remained undisturbed for a reason. The coordinates had been hidden in the last recording from the ruins on the previous moon, buried deep in the old language of the Velrith. A race even older than the Zorants. A race neither human nor alien, but something else entirely, something that had chosen to disappear from history. As the team crossed the sharp hills and craters, they passed strange ruins. Giant stone statues with shattered faces and long halls with collapsed ceilings. The air humming with strange energy that made their skin tingle and their suits flicker with static. No one spoke much. Every step forward made their hearts beat faster. Holt noticed the sky itself seemed wrong. Here too, dark, too quiet. No stars visible, like the moon was cut off from the rest of space. They reached the glowing mountain by nightfall, but there was no sun, no moonlight, only that strange light from within the stone. At the mountain's base was a gate, enormous and sealed, shaped like an eye and covered in runes that twisted the longer you looked at them. Arkaleth stepped forward, reached into her robes, and pulled out the ancient pendant she had shown no one since arriving, half human, half Cerinthian, with the symbol of the Veilrith etched on the back. She pressed it to the gate. The runes lit up. The ground trembled. Slowly, the gate slid open, revealing a long tunnel carved into the heart of the mountain, glowing softly with the same blue light. The air smelled like burning ice and forgotten memories. As they entered, the silence grew deeper. The tunnel led into a vast chamber unlike anything they had seen before, floating platforms, spinning orbs of light, and walls that shimmered with scenes from history not written in any book. One image showed humans and Zorans standing together, not as enemies, but as equals, holding strange devices, speaking to a third figure cloaked in shadows. Another showed the stars themselves breaking open, spilling something dark and alive. "This place," Arkaleth whispered, "is a vault of memory." Reyes touched one of the walls and gasped. Her eyes flickered. And for a second, she saw herself standing in a city made of silver and glass, speaking a language she did not know. "Showing us, ... other lives," she said, pulling her hand back quickly. Holt moved toward the center of the room, where a crystal pedestal rose from the floor. On it lay a sphere, glowing faintly, pulsing with slow rhythm. "It's a beacon," he said quietly. "The Veilrith used it to speak across galaxies, maybe even time." Sora scanned the structure with her device. "There's power here I can't even measure. If we activate this, someone or something will hear it." "Maybe they already have," Gallo muttered, pointing toward the far wall, where dark shapes began to appear. The wall melted away, revealing a long hallway filled with statues, but they weren't made of stone. They were people, frozen, caught mid-motion, human, Zoranthian, others, all turned to crystal, all silent. Caleth stepped forward, eyes wide, with horror. "These are not statues. These are warnings." Reyes walked beside her, voice low. "Why would they keep them here? Who did this?" A deep sound echoed through the vault, like a heartbeat, slow and massive. The light dimmed. The walls shimmered again, showing new scenes: war, fire, destruction, and a single word repeated in strange glyphs: "Return." Holt turned back to the pedestal, fists clenched. "The Veilrith aren't gone," he said. "They're waiting, watching, maybe judging." Arkaleth's voice trembled. "What if they were never gods, but jailers?" Suddenly, the sphere began to spin faster, and the whole chamber shook. The statues cracked. A deep voice, unlike anything they had heard before, filled the room, not with sound, but inside their minds. "Children of blood and betrayal, you step upon forbidden ground. Why do you awaken the silence?" Holt stepped forward. "'Cause we've lived too long in the shadow of a lie," he said clearly. "We've killed each other for centuries over a story that was never true. We want answers," the voice replied. "Then choose. Truth brings pain. Secrets keep peace. Which do you serve?" Arkaleth looked at him. "They're giving us a test." The light shifted, and suddenly the room was gone. Each of them stood, alone in darkness, surrounded by memories, not their own wars, betrayals, moments of mercy and cruelty. Both human and Zoranthian. Holt saw his own face reflected in a young Zoranth child's eyes as his team stormed a village. Reyes saw her command decisions ripple into innocent deaths. Kalis saw her ancestors burn the old scrolls and rewrite history. The voice returned. "You are bound by old blood. One of you carries the spark. One of you is marked." The darkness vanished. They were back in the chamber. The sphere now floated in the air, glowing brighter. Holt's chest burned. He looked down and saw a symbol glowing under his skin, the same symbol as the pendant. Everyone stepped back. Arkaleth stared. You're one of them. Holt shook his head. I'm not. I'm human. The voice spoke again. You are. The echo. The last of the line we left behind. A bridge. The chamber began to collapse. Walls folding inward. Go, Holt shouted. Now. They ran back through the tunnel as the ground split and the vault fell into itself. The mountain groaned. They made it outside just before a massive quake shattered the peak. Rocks fell. Dust rose. The glow vanished. The vault was gone. On the surface, the air felt heavier. The sky shimmered with strange colors. Above, ships blinked into view, dozens of them. Not human, not Zoranthian, ancient and silent, watching. Sora raised her scope. Those aren't ours. Holt stared. They're Velrith. They've returned. Kaleth whispered. And now they know who you are. Holt turned to his team, his voice steady. This isn't a war between us anymore. It's something bigger, something old. We either stand together or we fall alone. The forbidden moon had spoken, and the stars had listened. The past was no longer a secret. The future had just begun. A heavy silence stretched across the stars after the fall of the forbidden moon. But deep within that silence, something ancient was moving, something that had waited far longer than any living being could imagine. Something that once ruled the space between worlds and had vanished without a trace. And now it had returned not as a whisper, but as a storm. Darius Holt stood on the bridge of the Echo, his ship hovering just outside the gravitational pull of the shattered moon. His eyes locked on the strange fleet in the distance, neither Zoranthian nor human. Shaped like jagged shadows with glowing cores, silent yet alive, watching but unmoving. Around him, Rhea studied the flickering readings on her console. Gallo ran diagnostics, and Sora kept her rifle close, even though they were still in space. Queen Arkaleth stood beside Holt, her long cloak wrapped tightly around her, her sharp eyes filled with thoughts she refused to share aloud. They had seen too much, awakened something no one was meant to disturb, and now the consequences had come. Holt had felt it the moment the Velrith beacon pulsed through his chest like a second heartbeat. When the strange symbol appeared on his skin, the mark of the Echo, the bridge between bloodlines, though he had not asked for it, it had chosen him, but what it connected him to was still unclear. As the Echo drifted silently, a signal began to broadcast across all frequencies. Not in a voice, but in pulses, old patterns, long forgotten by human and Zoranthian systems, but instantly recognized by both. Reyes decoded it first, her voice tight. Hey, it's not just a signal, it's a warning. Something else is coming, something worse. Kaleth's face darkened. The Velrith were not the first. They were guardians, watchers, the enemy they once fought, the true destroyers. They were cast out, but not destroyed. Holt looked at her. You're saying there's another species? She nodded, slowly. Call them the Varnak, the lost enemy. They consumed entire systems. They didn't invade, they erased. The Velrith gave up their form to trap them, bury them outside time, and then they erased themselves from history to keep the secret safe. But now we've opened the gate. A rumble shook the ship, not from outside, but from within. Every system flickered. Lights dimmed, and a strange presence pressed against their minds like cold fingers in the dark. Gallo backed away from the main console. Nope, something's in the data. It's rewriting code, no source, no origin. The ship groaned. Through the viewport, the silent Velrith ships finally moved. Not toward them, but toward the blackest part of space, a rift that had appeared without warning, growing larger with every passing second. From its center came shapes unlike anything they had seen, dark vessels with jagged wings, cloaked in swirling clouds that moved like smoke and screamed without sound. The Varnak had returned, Holt knew they had only moments. He turned to Arkaleth. Your people have ancient records, hidden weapons. Anything that can fight this. She shook her head. Our empire was built on pride, not preparation. We forgot the warnings. We burned the scrolls. Rhea spoke up. The humans won't believe us. They'll think it's a trick. Holt clenched his fist. Then we show them. We bring proof. We take one of those ships apart, show what we're really facing. The plan was risky, nearly suicidal, but they had no other choice. The Echo dropped into stealth and approached one of the smaller Varnak scouts drifting near the edge of the fleet. Reyes guided them through the chaos, dodging debris and energy waves that twisted space itself. Sora led the boarding team with Holt and Arkaleth close behind, moving quickly through the strange corridors of the enemy vessel, which felt less like a ship and more like a living machine. The walls pulsed with strange light, and the air was thick with a smell like burned metal. The deeper they went, the heavier their minds felt, as if the ship itself was watching them, whispering to them. Gallo's voice crackled through the comms. I don't know how to explain this, but the ship is aware. It's not just reacting, it's reading us. They reached a chamber near the core, where a pulsating heart of energy floated between spikes of black crystal. Arkaleth stepped forward slowly. This is how they feed. Not on matter, on thought, on memory. Holt placed a charge, and they ran, barely escaping before the device exploded, ripping a hole in the ship's side. They returned to the Echo, carrying fragments of tech, biodata, and proof of the Varnak's existence. Back on board, Holt ordered Reyes to broadcast the evidence to both human and Zoranthian command. Within hours, dozens of responses flooded. In fear, confusion, denial, and just a few, who believed. Among them was Admiral Yara of the Terran Resistance and Lord Vyric of the Zoranthian Outer Guard. They met at a neutral station, orbiting a dead world. For the first time in decades, both sides shared the same table. Holt stood before them, with Arkaleth beside him, showing the records, the recordings. In the artifact, they now glowed with a strange light whenever the Varnak approached. You can choose to keep fighting each other, Holt said, voice clear. Or you can stand together against something that doesn't care who you are or what planet you come from. The Varnak don't conquer, they consume. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Admiral Yara stood. What do you need? And with those words, a fragile alliance began to form. Ships gathered, scientists studied, engineers worked together, building new weapons using fragments from the Varnak scout ship. But time was short. The rift grew. The Valerith ships fought in silence, buying time, but even they were falling. Soon, the Varnak would come through in full force. On the edge of the galaxy, in a system long abandoned, Holt led a mission to an old Valerith ruin buried beneath a toxic sea. The AI in the ruins spoke to him directly, calling him by name, recognizing his mark. You are the echo of the first bridge, it said. Your blood carries the signal. Only you can awaken the last gate. Holt activated the hidden core, beneath the CA defensive station built millennia ago. A network of dormant satellites lit up across the system, forming a barrier of light and sound. For the first time, a Varnak vessel was stopped mid-flight, screaming as it was torn apart by waves of focused memory and resonance. Reyes grinned. We can fight them now, but Holt knew it wasn't enough. The Varnak were learning, adapting. Every battle cost them lives, and every victory was temporary. The final message from the Valerith warned of a second rift larger, deeper, tied to the source of the Varnaks. Return. If it opened, there would be no stopping them. Holt looked at the star chart. The coordinates pointed to a system beyond the known galaxy, a place marked only as Illyrian. A name not found in human or Zoranthian maps, only in the Velrith records. Arkaleth paled when she saw it. That was their prison. Where the war ended. Holt nodded. Then that's where it must end again. The mission was clear. Go to Illyrian, find the source, seal the gate, or fall. As the fleet prepared to move, Holt stood alone on the viewing deck, watching the stars. The galaxy had changed. He had changed. No longer just a soldier. No longer just a ghost. He was something else, now part of an ancient plan, part of a forgotten legacy, and the only hope of stopping a darkness older than war. The lost enemy had returned. But this time, humanity would not stand alone. Beneath the strange red sky of Illyrian, where stars pulsed like old wounds and time itself seemed to move slower, Darius Holt stood with his team at the edge of a massive chasm, staring down into what the Velrith had called the core of silence. It's a place where the Varnak had been locked away after the First War, so ancient its truth had faded into myth. Its horrors buried beneath lies and fear. But now, the silence was breaking, and with it, the last hope for peace across the stars. Behind him, Rhea scanned the area for threats, while Sora and Gallo checked the charges they had set along the perimeter. And Queen Arkaleth stood in silent thought, her eyes locked on the massive black spire that pierced the heart of the chasm, humming with dark energy, pulsing as though alive. The Velrith beaconhold, carried on his chest, burned with heat, plodding to something deep below, something waking, something angry. The Allied fleet orbited above, human and Zoranthian warships standing together for the first time in living memory. But they knew no amount of firepower could win this battle, not against the Varnak, who twisted reality and devoured entire civilizations with whispers and shadows. Holt glanced toward the jagged mountains that ringed the horizon, where Velrith constructs floated in slow patterns, remnants of the old guardians that once protected the seal, but now even they were flickering, dying. "We go in," Holt said quietly, his voice steady but grim. "We seal it, whatever it takes." They descended into the chasm, rappelling down walls that seemed to breathe, passing carvings of ancient battles etched into the stone, showing figures made of light and shadow, warriors who had sacrificed everything to lock the Varnak away. The deeper they went, the colder it became, not just physically but in their minds, a cold that whispered of forgotten pain and endless hunger. Holt felt the beacon grow heavier with every step, the glow brightening until it lit the narrow tunnel with eerie light. When they reached the bottom, the chamber opened into a massive underground temple filled with floating shards of crystal, each holding echoes of voices Velrith, priests, Zoranthian kings, human generals pleading, warning, screaming. At the center stood the seal, a massive ring of interlocking metal and stone, cracked and humming with dark energy. Black mist oozed from its center, and within that mist, eyes opened to many eyes. Reyes stepped forward, scanning. "It's broken. They've already begun to come through." Holt didn't wait. He moved to the pedestal beside the seal, placing the beacon into its socket. The entire chamber shook. The mist pulled back slightly, the eyes narrowing in anger. A deep voice echoed across the temple, not from a mouth, but from the walls. From their minds, its echo of the broken blood. "You carry the mark, but even you cannot stop what has begun." Holt stared at the mist. "I didn't come to stop you. I came to end you." The seal lit up, bright bands of light shooting into the sky. Across the galaxy, ancient devices awoke, keys hidden on moons, deep oceans, lost ruins reacting to Holt's signal. But the Varnak struck. From the mist, dark creatures poured forth, part shadow, part machine, eyes glowing red, moving without sound. Sora opened fire. Reyes launched drones. Gallo triggered traps they'd prepared, and Arkaleth unleashed waves of psychic force, her ancient blood calling on powers long forbidden. The fight was brutal, the chamber turning into chaos as the team held the line. Holt focused on the seal, following the memory map the Velrith had left in his mind. Aligning the rings, each movement sending pain through his body as the beacon burned brighter, searing his skin. One by one, the rings locked into place, forming the ancient symbol of balance, of final judgment. The mist screamed. The creatures surged. Gallo was hit, thrown against a wall, motionless. Sora was pulled into the dark before Reyes could reach her. Arkaleth staggered, blood pouring from her eyes, her voice shaking. "Finish it, Holt. It must be sealed now." Holt placed his hand on the center of the seal. The beacon pulsed once, twice, then exploded with light. For a second, he saw everything. The First War, the creation of the Velrith, the sealing of the Varnock, and the betrayal that nearly destroyed it all. He saw the truth. He was not just the echo. He was the fail-safe, the final design of the Velrith, a living key, born of both lines, created in secret and hidden until the time was right. That time was now. The seal accepted him. Light burst outward, blinding and pure, tearing through the mist, burning the Varnak to ash. The temple shook violently, stone falling, the roof collapsing, but Holt stood firm, locked in place as the seal closed, the rift shrinking. The voice of the Varnock returned, weaker now. "You think this ends us? It only delays what must come. You carry us in your blood. We are never truly gone." Holt looked up, his voice calm. "Maybe, but I've given them time, and time is everything." With a final pulse, the seal closed. Silence returned. Real silence. Above, the rift in space vanished, the enemy fleet crumbling, their connection severed. Across the galaxy, ships celebrated, people cried, worlds that had once prepared for annihilation now saw the stars again. But below, in the shattered temple, there was only smoke, dust, and light. Reyes crawled from the rubble, bloodied but alive. Arkaleth dragged herself forward, her power spent. They found Holt lying at the center of the seal, the beacon shattered beside him, the mark on his skin gone, his chest still. For a moment, they thought he was dead, but then his eyes opened, just barely, and he smiled. "Did we win?" Reyes nodded, tears in her eyes. "You did it, Darius." He laughed softly. "Good. Tell them to keep watching the stars." Then his eyes closed again, but this time not in death. Months passed. The galaxy changed. Human and Cerinthian peace was no longer a dream, but a path. The Velrith ships left as silently as they came, leaving behind relics, technology, and quiet guardians to ensure the seal remained strong. A statue of Holt was built at the site of the battle, not as a symbol of war, but of choice. The choice to unite, to remember, and to prepare. Because somewhere in the edges of the stars, the silence had broken, but so had the fear. And that made all the difference.